Welcome everyone to Phillips Mill Art Talk. I'm your host, Laura Womack, and with me is our producer, Jen McHugh.
Hello all.
Today we're talking with one of the judges and three of the winners of Phillips Mill Emerging Playwrights competition. We spoke with two other winners earlier this year. This third annual competition has proved to be very popular, with submissions filling up only about a week into registration. And we're taking this opportunity to talk with our panelists about playwriting, its challenges, and hopefully its rewards. The 6 plays will be read by actors live in a webinar on June 12th. So please register for that at phillipsmill.org. And we have a new website, so it's all there for you. As you've all heard already, they're an amusing lot and they all have a lot to say. So we're going to do things a little bit differently today. We're going to take each of our guests individually for a short get-to-know introduction discussion, and then we'll bring them all back together and for a jolly time with a general discussion. So we'll also be taking your questions as usual. Please write them into the Q&A. That's much easier for us to keep track of them if they're in the Q&A rather than the chat. Jen will be putting up information in the chat that's useful for you, and we will take questions as we go along. So very good. Okay, we're going to start with John Augustine, our juror. Gentlemen, Adam, Jeff, Jim, will be with you in a moment. Thank you so much. Okay, juror John Augustine is a playwright, director, and actor. He's published an anthology of short plays called Augustine's Confessions. His plays have been collected in 2 anthologies and produced in numerous New York theaters. He's written for television, including Encore Encore with Nathan Lane, and Augustine has taught playwriting at Sarah Lawrence College, New York University, and more. Welcome, John.
Hi, Laura. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Thanks so much for coming this afternoon. Tell us a little bit about how this emerging playwrights competition, what the setup was.
Well, the idea came from the Mill Drama Committee itself. And the setup was initially just to put out the word to get submissions for new plays, new short plays. And as you know, the Mill is very committed to bringing art to the community of all levels, you know, art and photography and drama. And so they wanted to expand what they do. And so they came up with this idea of having this competition. And so writers submitted short pieces and they were chosen, and there are readings. I don't know, did that answer your question?
Yes, sure. That did. Yeah, exactly. Because I think it's not something, well, and you know, outside of Phillips Mill, I wasn't aware of it at all. So this sort of competition. So it's pretty exciting. And we have some pretty talented playwrights who've entered the competition. As I said, the submissions filled up within, I think, the first week, and you had to read 50 plays. How was
50 plays, and I have to say that happened so fast, and it just shows there are so many talented people working in the arts in every discipline. And so there were so many great plays. So we had Valerie Eastburn, I believe, or somebody in charge. Hi, Valerie. Put up a limit of 50 and had to put a time limit on it because, you know, we could have in theory gotten even more, because there are many play competitions throughout the world and the United States and everything. So which is also in the world, by the way. The United States is in the world, in case you weren't sure. So they wanted to put the limit so that we could, you know, I think you should help me out here.
Yeah, no, focus. Yeah, sorry, John. Yeah, no, well, you had a lot to read, so I can understand how that would just overwhelm.
My brain is still tired, yeah.
Exactly. And Valerie Eastburn, whom you referenced, is, of course, the head of drama at Phillips Mill, and this is her baby.
And a talented actor and singer and dancer and writer. She is really very funny. I don't know if she doesn't take enough credit or toot her own horn at all. So I want to toot her horn because she is a very funny writer.
Well done. I think you're right, John. So yeah, and we have more coming from the drama department this year. We have a lot of great things coming up. in drama. And we've got all of that on our brand new website. So please check that out. We'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. But so what was it like? You had to come up with your choices for out of 50 plays.
Yeah, so 3 judges, we read all 50 plays, and each of us chose our top 10, let's say. And then we got together in a group and discussed our top 10 and we wanted to see if there were any overlap. And then if there were not overlap, we would pitch our plays to the other people. And because we had read all of them, we had notes on them and we scored them. So we would discuss each play and decide, and then somehow came, like I'd say, well, what about that one? And then somebody else would say this one. So there were a lot more plays. The people were very talented and there were a lot of hard choices. So I just want to say that these winners are really fantastic and really talented. And it just shows, so we are excited by all the people that got chosen, but it made me realize, gee, it'd be fun to have more available for more people. There's just so much talent in the world that it's inspiring.
It is inspiring. And it's interesting, the winners, I don't know about all of the others, obviously, John, but it seems like these are very topical plays that we're talking with the 3 playwrights today. They're all very topical, but not like necessarily directly or in a head-on sort of way. It's kind of interesting. Did you find that generally that they were topical, or,
I guess we weren't looking for that. I think in general, we look for people that have a unique voice, or at least doesn't have a unique voice, but a strong voice, a strong point of view. And these writers definitely had a strong point of view. And the thing that's interesting is that you don't have to love somebody's play, because everybody doesn't love everything, but you can love somebody's talent or their point of view or their passion. So, like when we all go to the museums or to other theater or music or whatever, you love you're bringing your life to the art, and how you look at an art show. And one of my favorite paintings, jumping at the Museum of Modern Art, is I think it's Eve Klein. And it's basically all blue. And it's one of my favorite paintings ever. And I went to look at it one day, and this man came up next to me and said, "You like this?" And I go, "Yeah, I do." And he goes, "Well, I could do that." I go, "Yeah, but you didn't." and he did. Like, that's not rude, but like, this person did this thing. And if you try to recreate that blue at home, you can't really do it. There's something going on there. And so with these writers, it looks easy, they make it sound easy, but they have something they're working on, and it's intriguing. And sometimes the plays are completely finished, and sometimes they're touching on a topic or an idea, and that's part of the process and part of what short playwriting is about too. What's fun about a short play is you can explore a topic and see if you want to expand it into a longer play. Or sometimes a short play is all that it's meant to be. It's just meant to be an exploration in 10 minutes or 20 minutes. And so these writers were, so we got excited about these plays for that reason.
Yeah. So John, you have an incredible career. I mean, I think you've done everything
I've done everything, but I don't know that it's incredible.
It's an incredible career. So what was that like for you? I mean, you're published, you're produced, you're an actor, you direct. What's it like for you to be a judge, a juror in this competition and looking at other people's work?
As I think I've already said, I'm excited by other people's talent, whether they're actors, directors, writers, painters, musicians, anything. I just get excited when other people are creating. And so it's fun for me to support that. So I enjoy that for that reason.
All right.
See what's out there. Yeah. And by the way, in case people are wondering why we all look a certain way and of a certain age, it was a blind, if that's the right word, reading. There was no title page. We didn't know the gender or the ethnicity or the location. We didn't know anything about the plays. Zero clue. I mean, as much as one can know. You might have an idea like, oh, I wonder if this, but you're probably wrong. Like, if you guess who might have written this, you don't always know. So we didn't know, by the way.
I think that's a great point to make, John. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah. Let's bring our playwrights back one at a time. Let's start with, let's start with Jim Moss. Jim, come back on if you would.
I'm back on.
Thank you for joining us. And Jim is the author of Far from Providence. He's authored 5 full-length plays and over 100 one-act plays. His work has been produced in London, off-Broadway, and around the United States. In 2018, his play Tagged won 3 contests: first place in Theater Odyssey's one-act play festival in Sarasota, Best Lab Works production at the Pittsburgh New Works Festival, and the British Theatre Challenge in London. Jim, welcome to ArtTalk.
Hi.
So I learned a new term talking with you and your colleagues a little while back called a log line. Can you please tell us what a log line is and then give us yours for Far From Providence, please?
Well, I would say a log line is a rather quick little synopsis.
Okay.
And that's, you want to advertise the play. So the log line for my play is essentially, well, I don't have it in front of me. I carefully craft the log line. I wasn't prepared to speak the log line, but I can probably pull it up pretty quickly.
I apologize. I did not mean to put you on the spot, Jim, but if you doesn't have to be the actual log line, if you just want to give us a sentence about your play, because I guess I'm trying to put it on you because I don't want to give it away. So I don't want to take responsibility of giving your end away.
The log line is essentially, we have a couple, and the woman has returned to a secluded cabin where they're spending the weekend, and she's got scratches on her legs, on a twisted ankle, and she asks the man to return to Providence. They're spending a weekend up in Vermont, and he wants to know why she ran off into the woods after they had sex.
Okay.
And it brings up some issues in both of their past, and the relationship begins to unravel.
So that's a lot to put in of short play. I think I didn't do a page count on you, Jim, but it's roughly 10, I would say.
Yes, 10 pages. Yep.
That's a lot going on in one act. Is it hard to put so much into, a short play, or especially because you're working with dialogue? I'm going to ask you all about this dialogue issue, because I find it amazing that you can convey so much from dialogue.
Well, the idea is to do as much showing as possible as opposed to telling.
Right.
So that's a goal that, and that goes for all writers. You want to be able to show, and you want to be able to put the reader, the audience there in that moment, as opposed to just a lot of exposition telling. Oh, well, this happened, this happened, this happened. That's telling a story. You want to show the story as opposed to tell it.
And so here you're really taking on the prickliness of modern relationships, yes?
Yes. And the question in this particular piece is, and it is a heavy one, what, and for the characters, what constitutes rape? Because what happens is the couple begins to had been engaged in sexual activity, and one of them wanted to stop, and the other did not immediately stop. And the question is, well, why didn't you immediately stop? And why did you want me to? And so it's a heavy play. It's a heavy drama, and I usually don't write dramas, so this is an unusual one for me in that maybe about 20% of what I write is a drama. I mostly write comedies.
So that, again, just to have it be so revealing in dialogue in such a short format, that seems like a real challenge to the writer.
It can be. When writing works, it's when you're inspired, things can come out very quickly. And when you're not, I'm banging my head on the table for 2 hours. I get more done in 10 minutes of inspiration than I do when I'm having difficulty writing something.
Do you find that when you are struggling more, you're not as happy with the work in the end as when it flows freely? That's all that, as a journalist, which is a totally different thing. That was always my experience, that when the writing came easy, the work ended up being better for me.
It depends, because sometimes you'll snag onto something that will send the writing, into orbit. And I have a example. You have one play that I wrote that I use as an example of this. I started writing this little play about two sisters and the argument between them with a pet cat. And the premise, this was the premise of the play. And the one sister, Sister A gave the cat to Sister B, and the cat was destructive and destroying the house. And Sister B wanted to give the cat back to Sister A, and Sister A could not take the cat back. And she had to explain the reason why is because she thought the cat had toxoplasmosis and she was pregnant, and she had to admit being pregnant out of wedlock. And I thought, okay, it's a little premise for play. And I started writing it up, and then it was just not going anywhere. It wasn't interesting to me. I mean, it was like, okay, you've got the conflict, you've got the characters, but it's not really going anywhere. So it sits there, my little idea batch. I mean, I maybe wrote up a page of it at most. And then I get into this, I'm in a competition called, it was the Red Theater in Chicago was doing a competition where you sign up as a writer, and you have to write a play a day for an entire month. So they're not talking a full-length play, just a little one act is fine. And they give you an idea to work off of, like they might say, okay, give us a play that is about the Mardi Gras, give us a play about memories, give us a play that is all gibberish, give us a play having to do with a happy ending, give us a play with a pun in the title. So they'll give you like a little spur to write something with. And the one, in this particular instance, they gave me one that they wanted reality to come crashing down on a fantasy. And the example they gave was, okay, we found out there's a unicorn. It's real, they're real, but the last one is dead. I'm like, okay, well, let me open up my little spreadsheet of ideas, because I have a few of them written down there, and I'm looking for a fantasy idea I can force reality to come crashing down on, and I have nothing. I have no fantasy ideas. Like, dang it. So I read the setting again, and I come across the one with the two sisters and the cat. And I thought, well, what if the cat is the Cheshire Cat? And what if one of the sisters is Alice, and she's given it to the Cheshire Cat to the sister Lorena? Of course, the cat turns invisible, so it's destructive, and they can't stop it from tearing up the furniture, killing baby birds in the yard. And it just took off. The idea just took off from there, and it became a very funny little 10-minute play. I had lots of jokes. I mean, I wrote it, just went into orbit. I wrote it right there. It was like, boom, boom, boom. One of the fastest things I wrote, and it came out great. And I was pleased as punch with it.
So it started with a struggle.
Sometimes it just takes another idea, another element to be put into the premise that will send the play off.
That makes a lot of sense, Jim. I can understand that process a lot. Thank you so much. We're going to bring in Adam Richter now, and we'll have you back, Jim, in a little bit. Thank you. Okay, Adam Richter is a journalist and playwright from West Reading, Pennsylvania. His plays have been performed by the Reading Theater Project and Barley Sheaf Players, as well as the GI60 One Minute Play Festival. His nonfiction play, Second Home, 5 Stories of Immigration, was performed in a virtual staged reading by the Reading Theater Project in August 2020. Okay, Adam.
Hi there.
Hi, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Thanks for having me.
And there we go.
There's my daughter.
Got a guest joining us. That's
Yep.
Nice to see her.
Yeah.
All right, Adam, your play is called Eye Contact. Do you have a log line or a brief description for me?
I do. Hang on, it's a different screen. Let me pull this up. It is the Greek hero Perseus sets out to kill the Gorgon Medusa, and his plan does not work out.
Okay.
Basically. So if you've seen Clash of the Titans, or if you're steeped in Greek mythology, which I'm not, you might recognize the story of how Perseus, the demigod, set out to kill Medusa because he needed her head, because her look turns everybody to stone. So he basically needed her to kill a bunch of other really bad guys.
Right. And so, Adam, you have an interesting take on this. I enjoyed reading the Greeks when I was in high school, but You really gave them what for in this. Do you think the Greeks are still relevant to us?
I think so. I mean, yes, because the Greeks, eh, just like Shakespeare, just like everybody else, that they were sort of the progenitors of drama, and they tackled issues and they tackled themes that we are still talking about today. You know, what Jim was talking about with his play. I've not read his play, and I'm really excited to see it. But the idea of imbalance in relationships and you know, especially between men and women, that's something that's been going back for you know, thousands and thousands of years. So I think that if you tell it in a really stale, you know, way, and you perform it according, you know, exactly according to the text that the Greeks had and in the style, then yes, it could get stale. But if you find, I found one of the fun challenges of this play was to find a new way to tell the story that updates it for a modern audience. And I don't just mean the language. I mean giving them, putting a modern mindset into the plot of the story.
Yeah, I loved hearing Medusa through your eyes. I mean, her perspective on the situation I thought was great. Yeah.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I kind of started with the premise of like, why is Medusa hideous?
Yeah.
And so the idea for this play sort of snowballed from there, because it's like, well, what if she, you know, everyone thinks of her as this disgustingly ugly creature. What if she, you know, is what if history got that wrong?
Right.
And you know, her so, and then the played with the idea of like how she turns people to stone.
Right. Yeah, there was a very interesting take on it. So Adam, you're a working journalist, and other than the obvious, you know, journalism is true and plays are fiction. You know, what is different about writing plays from writing the news?
Well, I think that one of the things is in plays, I like the challenge of writing a story, writing something that uses the dramatic elements that you don't necessarily find in writing a piece of journalism. You know, you don't always have conflict. You don't always have character development. Somebody changing from the start of the story to the end. Those don't always exist in journalism. I think that, and I think one of the fun challenges of playwriting is searching for a deeper truth than just you know, the superficial A happened, then B happened, then C happened. So that was part of it. Another reason is I don't do a lot. I'm mostly in an editorial role these days, so I'm editing more and writing less in my day job. So playwriting became a really good and fun outlet to, you know, to exercise my writing muscles.
Right. Yeah, I just want to make one defense of journalism, and I always felt that it actually was getting at sort of a deeper truth, because you know, we're all I don't know, living these human lives, and the conflicts that come up, which is what journalism is reporting on, is, you know, the truth of being, you know, humans on Earth in a way.
You know what? You're absolutely right, and I should say that most of the stories that I was writing didn't have time to delve into it like that deeply. But you're right, and I think there's some amazing journalism out there.
Yeah.
So
one of our attendees, Jim Feld, says Medusa was a beautiful woman who was raped by Poseidon and then cursed by Athena. She was a complete innocent.
I completely agree.
There you go. He should come to your reading, right?
I hope he does.
Jim is a good friend of ArtTalk, so we always love to hear from him.
Yeah.
So is it a relief? I mean, especially if you're if you're doing more editorial work, editing, is it a relief to write from your inspiration, from what's in your heart, rather than responding to the external as a journalist must do?
It is. I like finding ideas for stories that wouldn't necessarily fit into the big box of journalism. And I should point out too, I think that could be an incredibly big box. one example I'm going to point to. This play has not gotten produced yet, and I'm still going through rewrite number 9,000. But the one that you mentioned, the Second Home play, was kind of a mixture of a journalism and theater project where I interviewed 5 immigrants to talk about their experiences of moving to the Reading, Pennsylvania area and creating a second home for themselves. It's one that I think the structures of journalism, especially newspaper journalism, would have limited the kind of story that I wanted to tell. But being able to use the theater as the medium gave me a lot more freedom, and I think a lot more leeway to tell their stories. For example, I basically took recorded interviews. I used their words for all the dialogue, and it's about an hour and a half, I think, production. But you couldn't fit that into into a newspaper article without cutting it significantly. You wouldn't even be able to do it online before people just lose interest in reading all of that text. I think if you have it performed, I think it's a much better way of conveying the story that these people tell.
I totally understand what you're saying, that having the luxury of time is something journalists don't have. So that's great. Yeah. Adam, thank you so much. We're going to invite Jeff Stolzer on, and we look forward to having you all back together in a short time. Thank you. Jeff Stolzer is an award-winning playwright whose short plays have received multiple productions in New York City, across the United States, and in Europe. His work is included in 2 anthologies. His coronavirus microplay, The Barter, will be published in Smith & Krause's Laughter is the Best Medicine, 45 5-minute comedic plays in the time of coronavirus. Stolzer earned an MFA from the University of Southern California. Okay, Jeff, do you have a log line for me?
I do. So the play is called The New Abnormal, and the log line is: a couple quarantined at home during the pandemic, their genders, ages, ethnicities, and names unspecified, argues about things mundane and serious as the confinement and their very different personalities threaten to destroy their relationship.
So, Jeff, I'm so glad that you referenced the fact that you have not assigned gender to the characters in your play. This is pretty unusual. What were you thinking? Why did you do it that way?
Well, it's a 2-character play. And as I started writing it, I kind of thought, well, these can be anybody. It could be an older couple. It could be a younger couple. It can be a man and a woman. It can be 2 women. It can be 2 men. So I wanted to create a play where the characters were defined by their personalities and by what they said, rather than by the normal signifiers. And it also made it, I think, more interesting to produce.
Yeah, I think it was such a great choice, because, we often ask actors or writers of one gender how they write for, characters of another gender. And when I look at your play, The New Abnormal, I totally see what you're saying. It is not gender specific. It is sort of the universal experience. Yeah. So how was your pandemic, Jeff?
Well, I had a bad pandemic, I must say. My dad passed away suddenly 3 months before the pandemic, and he was 91, but it was sudden. It wasn't expected. So, I was grieving that, and suddenly the pandemic hits, and I'm stuck in my apartment, and I live in New York City during the worst part of it. So, it was a very challenging time, and I really felt like I couldn't write. And then there was a call for 1-minute plays about the pandemic, and you alluded to the one that's being published, The Barter. So I said, well, I think I can write a 1-page play. I think I'm capable of that. And The Barter is about 2 strangers meeting on a darkened street. And it turns out they're there to trade toilet paper for hand sanitizer. So it's sort of dark, but comedic too. And so I said, okay. So I wrote that and I sent it off, and it ended up getting produced in 2 different places. It was anthologized in that Smith & Krause collection, which is coming out next month. I don't have anything to hawk with it, but yeah. So please buy that. I don't get any money, but yeah. And so really emboldened by that, I thought, oh, maybe I can write a play about two people stuck at home together during the pandemic, like just a classic two people driving each other crazy kind of dark comedy. And that's what I ended up writing.
Yeah. I'm sorry to hear about your father, Jeff.
Thank you.
Your play is very funny. I think humor, at least from my perspective, maybe this is not a universal thing, but I think humor must be very difficult to write. If you don't get it right, it's really uncomfortable.
Well, it's interesting. I've written both dramas and comedies, and I find drama harder to write because my natural inclination is to find humor in things. So to have to strip that out, I have a full-length play that's about an allegation of a date rape. And it won prizes, and it was produced in Detroit. And it was really hard to write because I had to be serious. And it was about date rape. And I mean, there's a little bit of humor in it, but I find naturally I'm just more drawn to comedic situations and comedy that comes out of character. So if you have the characters right and the situation right, for me, it was actually, I wrote it in one day. I think it's 18 pages. I wrote it in one day. Once I had the idea, it just kind of took off, as I think somebody was saying. I think Jim was saying.
Yeah, exactly. But you have to rely on the directors and the actors to get it right and carry it off for you. I even as a journalist, I wrote for radio years ago. I wrote a joke into my current event story, and it required the sound editor to keep a beat of silence, which he did not. And it just, the whole thing fell flat. And I tell you, that's been over a decade. I won't tell you how many years, but I'm still angry about it. What's it like to give your work over to other people and not have the control?
Well, you have to very much trust the director. And I've had terrible experiences with directors. I've had great experiences with directors. I've directed some of my own short plays so that you don't have that intermediary. But a lot of times a great director will bring more to your piece than you thought and will make it better. And then you can take credit for it. You can even write it back into your play, because that's kind of like, yeah, well, he did that staging, but it's my play. So I can write it in and I can pretend I did that. So it's not a bad thing. And yeah, I mean, listen, what you see on the stage is usually not exactly quite what you imagined in your brain. But I used to be a screenwriter. I'm still kind of a screenwriter. And there's no respect for screenwriters out in Hollywood where I used to live. So, I mean, just this week, my writing partner got notes from a producer that were ridiculous, but they're the producer, so they can do that. You know, they had, and 90% of what they tell you is stupid garbage. And this person had an MFA in screenwriting. But everybody's got an opinion. At least with theater, they have to respect the writing up to a certain point. Once you pass it off to the director and the cast, it's like your baby's been adopted, you cross your fingers, and you hope they do a good job with it.
Right, yeah. We have one of our attendees wants to know, how are you sure that what you're writing is actually funny? I think that's a great question.
You know, and to me, it's a somewhat mysterious process because, you know, if you're working on a sitcom in Hollywood, a network sitcom, and I did that as a writer's assistant a long time ago, they look for a certain number of jokes per page. So they actually identify jokes. I don't know how to write a joke, right? I know how to write maybe humorous dialogue, but I just, you know, in the process, I just write. And if the situation and the characters are right, it will be funny. And then afterwards I'll look at it and go, oh, that's pretty funny. Sometimes you write something, you don't even think it's funny. And then when the actors do it, they find funny. So it's sort of hard to even describe. I mean, you can't really teach comedy, I don't think.
Yeah, and you make a good point about, I've often said editors make you look better. So even though sometimes it's a little bit harsh to be edited, you do look better as a result of their work. So yeah, okay, well, Jeff, thank you so much. Let's get our group back together and have a general conversation. I'm excited to talk with you all and get the flow going. You alluded to this, Jeff. You said that that in plays you have a little bit more control than you do in Hollywood. And we've all, seen the movies that talk about how terrible it is for writers in Hollywood. But was surprised to learn that you all have more control in theater.
Well, in Hollywood, when you write a screenplay and you sell it, the studio actually takes the copyright away from you. That's kind of the deal, because you're in the Writers Guild. You become an employee of the studio. And that was something that was negotiated decades ago with the Writers Guild. And it's a good thing. You get health insurance, you get pension, but you give control away. I mean, unless you want to produce it yourself. As a playwright, you license your play to a theater, and you have certain rights that are sort of guaranteed, so to speak, theoretically, by the Dramatists Guild. And so if a director or the actors change the lines, theoretically, you can stop the production of the play. And famous playwrights like Samuel Beckett and Edward Albee have done that, where the fundamental aspects of some of the plays were changed. So that's part of your contract as a playwright. So you have more power.
Have any of you pulled a play or, put your foot down when things haven't gone right? John, you're laughing.
No, but I wrote a really bad play once, and I wanted to pull it from a production, but I couldn't. I'm not going to say anything more about that. I don't blame me. I do blame me. Forget it. Never mind. No, most writers don't pull anything. Usually in theater, as Jeff was saying, we work with the actors and the director, and like Laura, with your thing with that timing, with the space not being there, that's a timing thing. And as Adam was saying, you can't really teach comedy, except somebody who understood what you wanted would know there should be a beat there, and you needed that beat in order for the thing to land. And that's intuitive sometimes, but that can be at least told, not learned necessarily. But a director or somebody could have said to the actor or the director, we need a beat there for the audience to hear that, and that'll be the laugh, and then you learn in front of the audience. As you were asking Jeff, like, how do you know if it's funny? Well, we think something's funny, and then the audience tells us if it's funny a lot, and then rewrites happen based on the audience reaction.
No. In that particular case, I didn't get to write a lot of jokes, so.
You had one and you knew it worked, and it's disappointing, and I understand revisiting it 10 years later. But I would tell you to let go, except that I would have to let go of my upset, and I'm not gonna.
It would be good if I let go. I'm sure they were busy and they were in a hurry. Oh well. Anyway, so one of you said, we were talking before, and one of you said that these informal readings that we'll have at Phillips Mill of your plays help you learn about your plays. And I just thought that was such a great perspective of it on that. And I was wondering if one of you would care to expand on that, like how an informal reading gives you feedback on your work.
Well, because you can hear how the dialogue is going to sound by the actors who read it. And sometimes they'll read it correctly and how you envision it. And sometimes it will be a different read and it won't quite work. And sometimes they will read something and you will find something about the character you didn't realize was there. So it's always nice to have a different director look at another head to look at the piece and see what else is hiding in the text of the play.
Yeah.
So it's great to be able to hear that, and especially, and for myself, I want to hear sharp type dialogue. When something's not working, I'm like, is this overwritten? Does this need to be cut down?
Or just faster, or just talk faster.
Yeah.
There's a cliche about louder, faster, funnier. However, I find that's often fixes a lot of problems. Sometimes people are just not talking fast enough, and a joke goes from here to there. Not a joke. I'm not a joke writer either. Whoever said that, Adam or Jeff. But a thought goes from here to there, and if you stop along the way, it doesn't have a chance to land. So sometimes you got to say the whole thought quickly, so that it's funny, or whatever, even if it's dramatic, I guess. Yeah. But Jerry Zaks, the famous theater director, used to say you have to earn the laugh, and he wouldn't let an actor stop and try to get a laugh here, here, and here. He'd say, we're going for the one big one. And that's, I'm sure I'm paraphrasing him terribly, but but you don't want to, there's a timing to that and a rhythm. And when you, and Laura, not to go back to you, but you heard a rhythm, and there is a rhythm to things that work. And a lot of us writers, we all have our own rhythm. I mean, David Mamet has a rhythm, love him or hate him, he has a rhythm. As do all the, every writer has a rhythm, even Tennessee Williams and Edward Albee, and everybody has a rhythm to how their dialogue, when it works. And actors learn that, and then that's what a good director will help them with that.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what Jim's saying, I think, right? That you have a way your work works. But the thing we can learn by these readings, sometimes you think like I always want my stuff super fast, but once I had a play and the actor took her time with it more, and I learned something about it. And it actually was better when you gave her a chance to take her time and express those thoughts. It was my insecurity thinking it needed to go super quick, to not take up people's time. But she said, no, I trust this, and I'm gonna try, let me try this. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna trust you because you're talented.
That's really
One
nice.
thing,
Yeah, Adam.
sorry, I think one thing that writers can't control for as much is the casting. And I found when I wrote my second 10-minute play, I wrote about this man and woman who were, all I said was they should be relatively close in age. But I didn't say like if they should be older, if they should be younger. In my head, I envisioned them as like a couple, like two people in their like late 20s, early 30s. And when it was staged, the director said, I have these two great older actors. And my first thought was, oh dear God, this is not what I wanted. They're not at all what I envisioned. But the end result was just an amazing, like these were two very good seasoned actors. And like, even though they were not what I envisioned, maybe not the people that I would have cast if I were directing it, he found two really solid older actors who knocked it out of the park, and they did such a great job with the entire play. So I find, you really want to find directors that you can trust to make those other kinds of decisions that in my mind, the writer should not have to worry too much about. And I try, when I write my character descriptions now, I try to be as vague as possible, just because I don't want to say like you have to get like X actor to perform this role. Like, it should be within a range or an identity.
Well, that goes right into what you were talking about, Jeff.
Oh, I think it froze on me. Can you say that again?
Yeah, I think, Jeff, that was right, exactly what you were talking about by not assigning gender in your characters.
Yeah, and to me, also, I've learned, because I've been writing plays now for 10 or 12 years, I've learned to sort of embrace the fact that different productions, different actors will bring different things to your piece.
Yep.
So to have a piece where the characters aren't defined at all, really, other than by their personalities, it's kind of exciting to me, because I want to see what different theaters and groups will do with it. And going back to the idea of rhythm, my plays are very staccato. The dialogue is very short and clipped. So there's definitely a rhythm to it. And the stage directions can almost be a counterpoint to that, where it slows things down and presents breaks between the runs of dialogue. And I even directed one of my short plays. Actually, it was a full-length play. And when I cast it, and before the first rehearsal, I said, now, listen, this is not Eugene O'Neill, okay? It's a comedy, so it needs a certain pacing. So the actors got it. The guy reading the stage directions read the stage directions too fast, because the stage directions were supposed to slow things down and take a breather. So I thought to myself, well, I'm an idiot. I should have just let them do it the first time rather than immediately give them a direction. And then I corrected it and it was fine. But you learn about your own writing that way, because I said, oh yeah, that's right. Those stage directions are there so that the reader can take a break from the staccato dialogue. So obviously that's not what happens when something is staged, because then it's business, but the business on stage is also a break from the dialogue. So it's all about rhythm for me.
So I referenced before that I think dialogue, it must be so difficult to write, and that is what you all do. When you're writing a play, you're writing dialogue. And if you look at you know, when we all took English literature, literary criticism, when they talk about in novels or short stories, they all talk about, oh, the dialogue's really good, or this guy can't write dialogue. And you guys are reliant entirely on it. I just think that that is, you know, it must be challenging when your whole medium really is the dialogue.
I think with these writers, that's what we were talking about earlier, is that they have an ear for it. I think it's where your talent takes you. So if you're drawn to the way people speak and you go into other people's bodies and imagine what it's like to be that person, then the dialogue is easy for you because that's part of your talent. So I don't want to say it's completely easy. I hope I'm not speaking for you three, but I think in a sense it's easy for you because it's where your talent, part of your talent is there, that you understand how your characters speak and you write them. So
Yeah, you know, I think,
Yeah.
oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was just gonna say, what do you think? Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, you know, it's been said that great novelists haven't been able to write great plays, and novelists famously have a hard time writing plays because it is just dialogue. So I tend to agree with what was just said, that people who write plays have a facility for dialogue. That's why they're writing plays. You know, writing prose is a very different thing. I attempted a novel 8 years ago. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. I don't have a background in journalism, a little bit. So to try to write beautiful prose or funny prose or whatever prose, it was so hard. I mean, I turned my play, The New Abnormal, the short version, into a full-length play because it won a contest in France, and I thought, oh, I should expand this. I can take these characters through a longer journey. So I wrote the entire full-length play. I wrote 5 more scenes, 1 scene a day. I wrote the entire play in 6 days. It took me 2.5 years to write a novel, and it was terrible. So I'm going to stick with plays.
Jim, you looked like you wanted to say something about that, or you
I don't know
were?
if I necessarily agree with that. I think some writers can do both.
Oh yeah.
Sure. I can't think of anyone offhand, right? Well, actually, I think Tennessee Williams had a lot of short stories that he wrote that were really good. In fact, Tennessee Williams' stage directions are absolutely amazing. If you've ever, and you know, the audience never gets to see his stage directions and his descriptions of, for example, Stanley and Blanche from Streetcar Named Desire. They're literature on their own. I think he originally wrote Glass Menagerie as a short story, a Portrait of a Girl in Glass, I believe the name of it is. It's really it's very well written prose. So there are some authors that I think that can do both. I don't know if they do both equally well,
Right.
but you can. My one pro publication happens to be a short story. So I have one pro market publication, and it's not a play. So I've been trying to get my plays published for a while. That has not been happening, but I've done better on the short story than I have with plays, and as far as publications go for professional markets.
Okay, great. Well, we have a question from an anonymous attendee who says, how does the title come to you? Titles are also another difficult issue for a lot of writers.
Every single play that I write has the same title until the very end. They're all called play title until I've gotten the whole thing down, and then I try to figure out what the clever title is going to be. I had one that I wrote. It was originally called Rescue Mission, and then it had a staged reading. And after the reading, I made the joke to one of the actors, like, I was thinking of calling it Everybody Hates This Place. And he practically fell on the floor laughing. So now the play is called Everybody Hates This Place.
Gentlemen, anyone else I want to talk about the title?
My title is called Far from Providence, and Providence essentially means the grace or favor of God, and the characters are not within that.
Right. Yeah.
And it also happens to refer to the city that they're going back to, but you know, eventually they may or may not make it back to the city. So,
Jeff?
Yeah, so my title, when the pandemic hit, they were constantly on the news talking about the new normal of the pandemic. And, normal is such a strange word because what's normal? So rather than do the new normal, I thought, well, to me, everything is abnormal. So this is the new abnormal. And when I thought of that, I thought, oh, I like that title. It turned out, I think there was an album that came out, by somebody young that I didn't know about, that was called The New Abnormal, but I didn't steal it from that. Plus, you can't copyright a title, so too bad.
That's
But
what I was going to say, that they're not copyrightable titles.
yeah, after the fact, they were promoting this. Somebody had come out with this album called The New Abnormal. I thought, oh, I didn't come up with it first, but I'll take it. I like it. So.
So it must be pretty difficult to get your plays produced. How does one go about doing that? You give maybe some advice for playwrights in the audience.
Enter contests and calls for plays.
Yes.
And often very quickly, like this one closed in a week. So, it's just, you have to keep doing that.
Yeah.
That's a big question, Laura. It would take a whole nother weekend seminar because that topic is being discussed nonstop among every gender, binary, ethnicity, it's impossible. It's just an ongoing topic. It's a journey. That's why we stay in it, because we love it.
Yeah.
One thought, in case, I don't know if we're getting close to the end, I want to say to the listening audience that come to hear these plays, is that it's a different kind of listening, and then you can interject or whatever, but it's a first read. It's by actors who are going to be wonderful, but the first read is a chance to learn. You have to listen in a different way. It's not like when you go to a play that's been rehearsed for 4 weeks. They're getting a fresh step one, and it's for the audience and also for the writers and the actors. Everybody involved is hearing it and working on it for the first time. They're probably going to have 2 hours, 4 hours, or whatever, rehearsal just to get centered. But it's a different way you listen to a reading. I had some friends from the mill ask me, like, what is a reading? And so some people have not been to a place where the actors hold the script in front of them and read. But it's literally imitates the idea of sitting around the table or whatever that we do at a first reading, just to hear the words. Now they're going to commit to it and they make big choices, but there's not a whole lot of investigation. So you have to listen in that same way and use your imagination. And then sometimes it lands better than you expected, and sometimes maybe not so well. It doesn't mean the play doesn't work. It means there's stuff to learn about production. Was it the director, the actors, the writer? And those are things we take from our readings when these things go on. So it's fun. It's just it's an exciting opportunity, I hope.
And, can I add to that? I go to a lot of readings in New York City.
Yeah.
Because they're free. The big off-Broadway theater companies like the New Group and Playwrights Horizons, they will have public readings where you can go, and the actors will have the scripts behind the music stands.
Mm-hmm.
There's another group called The Lark, which just develops plays and doesn't even produce them. And I think it's like listening to a radio drama, but if the actors are good and the play is good, and you're sitting there in the audience, it's like seeing or hearing the play. You can be moved to tears by a play where the actors are reading it from the book. So readings are really great when the material and the talent is great.
Also, some actors have said, jumping on what Jeff just said, they do it intuitively or instinctually the first time at the read, and then the rehearsals are about getting back to that first choice, learning how they did that so they can repeat it every night. So they have to investigate, what did I do in that reading? How did I do that? Because sometimes you just fly and it lands, and then they have to work it out. Because that's a skill you have to learn to be able to repeat something, 8 performances or 8 days a week or whatever, 8 performances. Yeah.
I have to say the reading sounds great to me. And Jeff, now I'm going to try to find out about those readings. Just to see people in the process of working it out, I think is really exciting. We are getting short on time though. And Jen points out that Kimberly Kalaja, who is also one of the winning playwrights and who we talked with in January, has a great question. And I'm going to let Jen share that with us. Jen, there you go.
Okay, Kimberly said, this is so interesting. Playwrights are often required to provide what's called a character breakdown when we submit our work. This is a description of each character that specifies age, race, gender, etc. I love that Jeff writes vague character descriptions and that he is open to a director's casting actors who do not necessarily correspond to what he imagined when he was writing. I would love to hear the others weigh in on if they have ever felt that the personalities of the characters were the main thing and maybe even felt limited by specifying age, race, gender, etc.
Great question. What do you think, guys?
I think it depends on the play. Some of the characters I have very defined in my head, and some characters can be a little looser as far as what their capabilities are, or what their race, gender, etc. Can be. In particular, Far From Providence, it doesn't matter to me what the age. I would say the age range. There's probably about a 20 or 30-year age range there. With those characters, they could certainly be any ethnicity. And in fact, it could even be, I have to think about this now, it could even be either any gender as well. I think it depends on what the characters and the situation the characters are in. Whereas other plays, obviously you need an older actor, or you need a younger actor because you've got a child on, you've got a child character on stage. So I think it depends on the play and the characters for me.
Adam?
Yeah, I agree with Jim. I think the story needs to drive a lot of those decisions, but I also recognize that in 2021, I think we as playwrights need to be as open to broadening the casting net as possible. I think if an actor, for example, the play when I'm writing plays these days, I never include race or ethnicity because, except in very few circumstances, it's not necessary. It can be, Medusa, for instance, can be played by anyone who's female identifying, of any age, of any ethnicity. And it's important to me that that those casting decisions be as broad as possible. I think there are sometimes when it has to be, like, for example, Medusa has to be female identifying, Perseus has to be male identifying, because that's kind of the structure of the legend that I'm satirizing. But I think in other cases, if you can keep it as broad as possible, and that opens the possibilities for a broader pool of actors, I think that you're doing yourself and the theater community a service.
But along with that, though, in answer to her question, is that like characters have a color. And so for a casting breakdown, I might not say what ethnicity or whatever, but if it's a strong woman, maybe she needs to be strong and confident, and that's her main color, and it's needed for the character. And another character might have a fragility that's more like a flat, so you want to make sure that because actors do bring something. Yes, every actor says I can play every role, but they do have a color, and there's something you bring to a part.
That's an excellent point.
So sometimes, I put the quality of the character in the description, so you attract that person. And I agree with the other men that ethnicity at this point doesn't matter unless, well, that's a whole nother complicated.
Well, unless the play has to do with race,
yeah, right. And then we get into something else.
Otherwise, it's not an issue.
No, it's not. And so, yeah, I put in mind, any ethnicity if it doesn't matter, and then I'll put which one it is if it's referred to.
And then again, Jim, you're talking about the story driving the casting decisions, which I think is something we all agree on.
Gentlemen, we went over a little bit, and I apologize for that. And I'm also sad that we're a little bit out of time, because the discussion is really nice. And I think that just shows how wonderful it's going to be on June 12th when we have the reading and we can have a discussion, and the people in listening can know what your plays are about. I mean, they're all really great. And the other 3 plays are terrific as well. If people would like to go on to phillipsmill.org, they can listen to they can watch the Art Talk with Kimberly Kalaja and Nick DeSimone. Before we sign off and I give all the credits, maybe we can take a couple more minutes to quickly Can you give some advice for the people who are here tonight to other playwrights real quick about, just doing what you do, entering the competitions, or any sort of advice you'd like to offer?
Just keep writing.
Keep writing.
I'm going to say have a strong. Go, Jim. I'm sorry, Jim.
I know I just said a writer writes always. You just have
Writer.
you have to keep writing, even though you don't feel like it. And when your writing doesn't come out and what you're trying to do doesn't gel, you have to just keep plowing ahead with it.
Okay.
One of the reasons I'm sorry, I'm going to babble now, but one of the reasons I like some of the writing challenges that I've been involved with, where you write a play a day, for example, an entire month, is because it forces you to write. It forces you have a deadline, you've got to meet the deadline. And and I'm surprised sometimes at what has come out of those. I just did one recently this year, and I ended up writing a play a day for 28 days, the entire month of February. I ended up with 12 good plays.
That's fabulous.
Last time I did it, I had maybe 5 good ones. This time I had 12. Like, okay, I'm improving.
That's great. Jeff?
Yeah, I would second that. I think you have to keep writing. Don't be too precious about your writing. As Annie Lamott says in Bird by Bird, allow yourself a shitty first draft. Pardon the French. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that here. But, a lot of great writing is rewriting. And I saw the great playwright Annie Baker speak in New York about 10 years ago. And she said her advice was submit to everything. And I know when I wrote my first play, I submitted it to, and it was about Holocaust survivors in Los Angeles. And I submitted it to a contest in Texas, a statewide contest. And I said, well, they're either not going to get this at all, or it's going to be so exotic that they're going to like it. And it won, and it was produced outside of Houston. And so I almost didn't submit it because I thought, Texas, they're not going to get a play about old Jews in Los Angeles, but they did. And they gave it a great production. So don't be your own worst enemy. That's another thing. Sometimes we have this inner critic who tells us, this isn't good, or don't submit. Ignore the inner critic. Kill the inner critic. That's all I have to say.
I love that. John?
Oh, no, well said, everybody. Yeah, I agree. Tell the truth, have a strong response to something, and don't be afraid to tell the truth. It doesn't mean tell your true story, but let your characters tell their truth, and don't be afraid of that.
Thank you all so much. We've had some very nice appreciation for you in the chat from other authors. I've certainly enjoyed this. John Augustine, Jeff Stoltzer, Adam Richter, Jim Moss, 4 playwrights all. Thank you all very much for joining us on ArtTalk.
And keep the play in playwriting. Or not.
Thank you also to Jen McHugh, of course, our executive director for ArtTalk. And thank you to Valerie Eastburn, the head of the drama program at Phillips Mill. In addition to the live online reading these plays will have on June 12th and the discussion afterwards, which clearly is going to be great. Drama has a children's workshop coming up in August that includes a live performance. So I think that's definitely something to look into. And next up on ArtTalk, we'll get to know Francisco Silva, the artist who won our signature image competition. His subject matter, besides nature, includes a series on social justice issues, and his work is influenced by the colors of his native Peru. So join us on June 13th for that. All the details of the play readings, the children's workshop, and future art talks are on our newly made over website at phillipsmill.org. Kudos to Ananta Creative, who did the beautiful makeover, and to our colleagues at Phillips Mill who contributed content for that. It was a big job and it looks great. And thank you to all of you in the audience who joined us today. We are very appreciative that you spend time on beautiful Sunday afternoons with us. Thank you for coming tonight. This is Phillips Mill Art Talk. I'm Laura Womack.
Yay, Laura. You thought you were getting out clean.